Ken Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 6:30.
WMAL.
7:07 on the Morning Majority. Good Monday to you. Tucker Carlson comes your way in about an hour from now, 8:06. And Jimmy Pethokoukis from Reuters, CNBC, went to China. We'll talk to him about what he saw over there and how the economy is going right now. Joe DiGenova, our legal expert, joins us right now, former U.S. attorney, of course. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. I'm talking to that new dance team, Neiman, Wilson, and Ham.
That's right.
Oh, well, one of us is rhythmically challenged,
So, have you seen the pictures of Anthony Weiner?
Hard to miss. Very interesting development in this story. And Mary Catherine, you got to start blogging on this and getting people going. When he announced the other day that he wasn't going to go to the authorities because this was a nothing burger,
right,
and said that he had hired a private law firm and a private investigator to look into the matter, here are a series of questions that he needs to answer. Who's the law firm? Who's the investigator? Who's paying for it? And will the results be made public? And that needs to be gotten on right now, because the reason he didn't go to the police or the FBI is that he would have been lying to them and committing a crime in any statement that he would have given them.
Oh, that was my argument at the time. The mere switch from saying, oh, this is a very big deal, to I'm going to hire a private lawyer to look into this is like, yeah, we know why.
He said his initial statement from his office said his account had been hacked.
Right.
That was false, and he knew it. And he was smart enough to know at that point that that was not going to fly. Now, at that point, he did not know about TweetDeck and the record that now exists of who used his account on that night in an authorized manner. I think this story gets deeper. It doesn't get thinner.
But just because he said that it was hacked initially, and because he didn't go to the police, he's not in any legal trouble for publicly saying that, is he?
He's not in any trouble from the public statement. But if he had made that statement to the police or the FBI, that's a crime, and because he would have known at the time he made it that it was not true.
Hey, Joe, we're going to do more about this in a minute, but there's this story out of Florida where apparently a Broward County judge has struck down one of the oldest traffic laws on the book. It has to do with red lights. Apparently, when you have red light cameras, you get charged one fee for the infraction. If a police officer stops you for running a red light, apparently there was a different fee structure.
Right.
And the Broward County judge says, no, you can't have that. You can have one or you can't have the other, but you can't have both. So the red light cameras, some people are saying, may be on their way out in Florida.
No,
what do you think about all this?
Well, it's an equal protection argument. In other words, you two different penalties for the same offense. But the truth is the law in this area is very clear. There's a phenomenal amount of discretion in law enforcement authorities on how they charge and what they charge. What they'll probably do is just synchronize these things and make the fines identical for whatever this particular speed is that you're charged with, and that'll solve the problem. This is no big deal.
I was hoping.
The cameras are staying where they are. They're too much of a source of revenue.
Yep.
All right, what about this? We talked about this last week, and Chris Plant had an interesting conversation about it on his show, about the gay softball league that will allow two non-gay players on the team. There was a lawsuit filed by, I guess, some bisexual guys who said, they questioned, their gayness, essentially. Is it legal to have a gay-only softball league?
That is an open federal question, which will be resolved by, of course, of all places, a federal court in San Francisco.
Well, there you go.
It isn't clear that you can do that, and it's going to work its way through the courts. It sounds awfully fishy. I mean, it just from looking at it from perspective, part of the problem in the case was the manner in which the two bisexual players, were allegedly interrogated. And it was pretty rough stuff, and it was in public, and there were a large group of people around. And I think that a lot of the case revolves around the embarrassment and the ham-handedness by which the inquiry was made by the ball club. But I think the ball club's going to lose.
All right, but is there a difference between sexual orientation and, say, age? I mean, there are a lot of leagues that say you have to be 40 and over to play in this league.
Well, there has to be a rational basis for any distinction that you make. And if it is a gay softball league, which does allow you to have heterosexuals, a certain number on
only
your
two.
team.
That's right.
And so if you're going to do that and you're going to allow heterosexuals on, the ability to discriminate at that point becomes very, very limited in terms of these types of things.
Well, doesn't it also become very difficult, Joe, to figure out, how you decide if somebody is gay enough?
This is the ultimate victory of victimhood in society, running decisions about who throws, catches, or hits a softball.
Right. We'll leave it at there.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about John Edwards. We've got this indictment. He's got 6 charges against him, and it's a whole discussion of whether these donations were gifts or donations that went to pay for his mistress's bills, and maybe he should have reported his mistress's bills to the FEC. But some people are saying, well, it's kind of a reach. Can we really get there for a conviction? What does the evidence look like?
It looks like a hung jury to me.
Yeah.
I don't see how you convict John Edwards on this church. I can understand why the U.S. attorney did it. It makes a lot of sense because it was very clear that Andrew Young was told to go out and get donors who had already given to the campaign to give this money. If he had gone out and asked for money from people who were not previously donors to the campaign, there's no case. But he went to donors to the campaign to get the almost $1 million, and that's the problem. However, the case is not pretty. It does not involve the kind of traditional campaign violations. It is a new interpretation of the law of campaign contributions. I think the government's going to have a very tough time, even with an unattractive defendant who deserved to have his face slapped by the public, and that's what this was, basically.
Right.
This indictment was a face slap.
Well, and if it did happen that he was convicted, would that have any sort of broader reaching consequences for other normal expenditures on campaigns?
No, this is an aberrational case, and criminal cases generally don't have any application beyond the case that they're in unless there's an appellate precedent. But I'll tell you something, he's got a great legal team with Greg Craig, and they're going to try this case to a fare thee well. And by the way, one of the key players is dead. Fred Barron, who was one of the masterminds of this thing, is dead. And so that leaves them with Andrew Young and, Real Hunter. And Andrew Young is a goofball. I don't know if you've seen this guy, but I mean, he is really a goofball.
Well, he apparently took $10 million, essentially, to, create this lie or to run with this lie and took responsibility for the kids himself. Remember when that all came out?
Sure.
So I'm curious as to why there wouldn't be an investigation into that, into how he got that money and how much money did he really get from John Edwards?
Well,
and what was it in exchange
for? There probably was an investigation of it. He was granted immunity. He was given immunity so he wouldn't be charged with any of that if crimes were committed. And that's how prosecutors make cases. They wanted to get the big guy, John Edwards, so they gave immunity to him, to Riel Hunter, to Mrs. Mellon, the 100-year-old gifter. They didn't have to give immunity to Barron because he's dead. So, I mean, with a guy like Andrew Young, who you absolutely have to have as a witness, the prosecutors will do what they have to do to forgive and forget just about anything except murder.
Joe, when you were a U.S. attorney, you had to make calls like this. Would you have brought this case?
I would not.
You would have let it go?
I think I would have brought a civil case against John Edwards. I think a criminal case is very difficult to make under these circumstances. And as I said, I think it's arguably a case that a prosecutor could bring. Not one that I would have brought, but I think the U.S. attorney down there made a defensible position, and the reason, as I said, is if they had gone to people who were not previously donors to the campaign, there would have been no question that it was not a campaign contribution. But since they were previous donors, I don't think there's any question that it's a defensible position, but I think it's a very difficult case to win. Unless, this is a North Carolina jury. They may hate his guts at this point. He didn't run for re-election purposely because he couldn't get reelected.
Right. All right. So Anthony Weiner, you want to know if he hired a private law firm? He didn't hire you then, right?
No. But the key question here is, he said, this is nobody's business. I'm going to investigate this myself. Who's the law firm? Who's the private investigator that's doing the cyber research for him?
Right.
Who's paying for it? And will the results be made public? No one has started asking him those questions. As they say in the business, let's move this story ahead.
All right. Thank you, Joe, as always. We appreciate it.
Okay, guys.
You're the best. Joe DiGenova, our legal expert here on